Margaret Thatcher telling you there's no such thing as society. The modern Britain we know today in the crucible that transformed our nation. Everything from rave culture to financial deregulation. Decade of discord actually forced signing on became a national pastime. Steelworks closed in 1980. Entire families had became a running joke.
No such thing.
4 to 85 miners' strike wasn't just industrial action.
People queued for benefits and dodged football hooligans. This very decade of chaos and conflict forged the Britain we live in today.
Police officers from London were bussed into Yorkshire pit villages. Fire, Toxteth, Handsworth, Chapeltown in policing. But here's what they buried in the appendices: £5 million in today's money.
Nostalgic trip back to
Lords
the 80s.
were arresting him.
Remember
the
when
riots
signing on
spread
felt
like
a national pastime? By January 1982, unemployment hit
87,000 miners downing tools, 91 arrests, and communities literally split down the middle. Civil war by another name. What most people forget is the violence wasn't one-sided. Garment's inquiry revealed systematic racism. This isn't your typical nostalgic fire. Toxteth, Handsworth, Chapeltown. Grab your riot shields because police officers from London were bussed into Yorkshire pit villages. The very chaos we despise £5 million in today's
University
money.
graduates were grateful.
Lords, what most people forget is the violence wasn't one-sided. Arresting him, the riots spread like wild. Margaret Thatcher telling you there's no such thing as society. The modern Britain we know today came the crucible that transformed our nation. Everything from rave culture to financial deregulation. Decade of discord actually forced policing. But here's what they buried in the appendices. Garment's inquiry revealed systematic racism.
Teenagers worked 40 hours a week learning how to wire plugs. The psychological damage was severe.
87,000 miners downing tools, 91 arrests, and communities literally split down the middle. Civil war by another name. What most people forget is the violence wasn't one-sided. Garment's inquiry revealed systematic racism.
The 1984-85 miners' strike wasn't just an industrial dispute. It was a civil war in miniature. 187,000 miners walked out. Over 11,000 arrests followed. Communities were split permanently. Police were shipped in from London to Yorkshire pit villages, earning overtime that exceeded a miner's annual wage. At the Battle of Orgreave, 5,000 officers faced 10,000 miners in scenes closer to medieval warfare. Arthur Scargill was knocked unconscious, his famous cap lost in the chaos. Later, it emerged that BBC footage had been edited to make it appear that miners charged first, when in reality the violence began with police. A BBC cameraman later admitted he was shocked by the manipulation. Internal documents showed officers were paid $30 a day in riot money, more than miners earned in a week. Entire villages survived on soup kitchens run by miners' wives. Those who crossed picket lines needed police escorts just to buy groceries. Some families still don't speak to each other 40 years later. April 1981. Brixton is burning. This wasn't mindless violence. It was the inevitable result of years of aggressive policing under an operation called, unbelievably, Swamp 81ers. In just 6 days, police stopped and searched 943 people and arrested 118. Half were released without charge. Unemployment among young black men stood at 55%, compared to around 20% for white youth in the same area. The spark was an incident involving a stabbed teenager, Michael Bailey. When police tried to help him, the crowd thought he was being arrested. Riots spread to Toxteth, Handsworth, and Chapeltown. The damage totaled the equivalent of £45 million. The Scarman report acknowledged institutional racism in policing. But buried in the appendices was another truth. MI5 had infiltrated black community groups, stoking tensions under the guise of preventing communist influence. At the same time, the IRA's mainland bombing campaign became part of daily life, more than 50 attacks over the decade. In 1984, the Brighton hotel bombing nearly wiped out the government. 5 people were killed. Fear became routine. Every unattended bag meant evacuation. Irish accents drew suspicion. The Birmingham 6 and Guildford 4 showed how panic corrupted justice itself. Even Gerry Adams's voice was banned from television, his words spoken instead by actors. Football in the 80s wasn't a game, it was urban warfare with a halftime break. Hooligan firms like the Chelsea Headhunters, the Intercity Firm, and the Bushwhackers operated like paramilitary groups. In 1985 alone, there were an average of 242 arrests every weekend. The Heysel disaster killed 39 Juventus fans. English clubs were banned from Europe. And this violence wasn't limited to the working class. Among the hooligans were stockbrokers, businessmen, even oil executives. This wasn't poverty-fueled rage. It was pure tribalism. Nothing united Britain in anger like the poll tax. A duke paid the same as a dustman. By 1990, 1 in 4 Scots refused to pay. In London, protests turned into riots in Trafalgar Square. Across the country, can't pay, won't pay groups formed. Hundreds of thousands became outlaws. Attacks meant to improve accountability made local government unworkable and hastened Thatcher's downfall. While everyone feared nuclear war, acid rain was quietly killing the countryside. By 1987, 67% of British trees showed damage. Classified reports revealed Westminster Abbey was eroding 10 times faster than normal. Lakes in Scotland and Wales became biologically dead. The AIDS panic of the late 80s fueled hysteria and discrimination. Tabloids claimed HIV could be caught from toilet seats. Section 28 banned schools from even discussing homosexuality. Only one moment truly shifted public attitudes. Princess Diana shaking hands with AIDS patients without gloves. The Great Storm of 1987 exposed just how fragile Britain's infrastructure really was. Warnings were ignored. 18 people died. Millions of trees fell. Some communities were without power for weeks. If we couldn't predict the weather, what else were we getting wrong? The Chernobyl cloud, Piper Alpha, asbestos in schools, a dead Thames, rotting tower blocks. The Broadwater Farm riot. We were poisoning ourselves for profit. Brutalist housing became a concrete prison for the poor. Above it all hung the constant threat of nuclear war. NATO exercises in 1983 nearly triggered a Soviet response. Secret bunkers were stocked. Lists of survivors were prepared. Everyone else was destined for mass graves. The 4-minute warning siren reminded Britain that the end was always close. By the end of the decade, the gap between North and South had become a chasm. London boomed. Industry collapsed. This wasn't just inequality, it was cultural apartheid. So there you have it. 13 reasons the 1980s in Britain were anything but glamorous. Unemployment, riots, environmental disaster, fear, survival. But we endured, and those hardships shaped modern Britain, for better or worse. If this story stirred memories, share them in the comments. What did I miss? Which 80s nightmare still stays with you? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Britain's darkest decade, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.